afternoon, everybody. Welcome, K4CO Radio. We are breaking in for a wonderful wonderful interview with Jessica Hartung, who is actually the author of The Conscious Professional, entrepreneur, author, and leadership activist. How are you today, Jessica?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Just wanted to thank you for coming in. I know it was quite a little bit of a drive for you. So.
All good.
All right. Well, let's just kind of tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, just to kind of start out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was a weirdly independent kid. And I think that some of that weird independence has translated into entrepreneurship very well. I was the kind of kid who would start out on my bike and go somewhere. I lived in Downers Grove, Illinois, and I would get myself lost on purpose so that I could find my way home. And what I love doing about that is the adventure, the exploration, the pioneering.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it's a risk, but it's not such a big risk. I'm not going to ride so far that I can't possibly find my way home. So I think what I notice about me as an individual, as when I started my first company in Macinteach after I was selling computers, and I found that people would come in and say, I really want to get this mail list done, or I really want to get this project done. They'd come in, they'd buy a computer, and in a couple of weeks they'd be back saying, it's a really great computer, but I can't do the thing that I wanted to do. I don't know how. And so I went into computer consulting, and so Macintosh Training and Consulting, Macinteach was the company. Mm-hmm. And the idea was find a need and fill it. And that's, an entrepreneurial mindset that comes from being independent thinking. And you'll notice when we talk today about how that independent thinking changes the work experience. And for me as an entrepreneur, what I found is we don't just grow businesses, we grow ourselves while we're growing our businesses.
Right.
And that self-leadership, personally and professionally, that helps us grow. So I got very interested in leadership development, studied it, got a degree in it, and started a leadership development company here in Boulder in '98. And we had the opportunity to work with some amazing socially conscious leaders in government, nonprofit, and social business. And what I found, for myself is that that's what really connected to me, is when we're using our full selves, we're bringing what we care about to what we do.
To what you do, exactly. And I really like how you said you wanted to get lost just so that you can find your way home. You didn't go too far out, but
right.
I really like that. And so going on the entrepreneurial type of spirit, so with Macintosh, what was your favorite thing about doing that?
Well, with Macinteach, I would help folks do their desktop publishing, because that's what a lot of folks were really into. And sometimes I'd go and set up their computers in their home, or help them as an assistant to getting done what they set out to do. And it's really very much the same as coaching, whether it's a person who's new in the workforce or someone who's been very senior at an executive level, helping them figure out what is it that they're really trying to do, mm-hmm. and how to go about doing it. That's been my pleasure. Yeah, it's the part I like best.
Excellent. I love it. And so you wrote The Conscious Professional. Right here. And for everybody just kind of tuning in, we're speaking with Jessica Hartung, author of The Conscious Professional, entrepreneur, author, and leadership activist. What prompted you to start writing?
We spend half of our lives at work, and for most people, they don't enjoy it. Too many people don't enjoy it. And so I wanted to improve work lives. And particularly what I noticed is that there's not enough folks who are receiving mentorship. And that's for a lot of reasons. The pressures in business, just the way things have gone. There's a lot of unmentored folks out there who don't have a manager who's looking out for them, or don't have a mentor who can support them. And so I started to write because I felt, here I am being, providing coaching and services to help those leaders figure out what they want to do and how to go about it. But the tools and the methods aren't specific to one person. They could be generalized, and more folks who can't afford a coach could buy it in a book. So the subtitle, Transform Your Life at Work, of this book, it really was what I had in mind, is I want folks to be able to have a way to access that transformation, even if they don't have someone in their life who can help them with it. And that's where books have supported me in my, I've gotten a lot of mentorship from books, mentors that I couldn't have, met in person, but I can receive their wisdom. And so I spent a lot of time trying to distill, give examples that are really relevant to people today, and use that as the coachability so that folks can have the reflection questions and the coaching lessons right in the book.
And when it comes to the book, I mean, are you really speaking to the employee? Is it for management? Okay. So
well, actually, as a leadership coach, I provide individual attention to executives who are under pressure, who have a lot going on, and yet, their managers have very similar issues. And you know what? In an employee level, we also have similar issues. But I've really found that when employees at whatever level take charge of their own development, then things start to happen. It's not something that comes from the top down. And unfortunately, a lot of management and leadership work says it starts from the top down. No, not in this book. This book starts wherever you are, from leading from the place where you can see the organization, from the line of sight between what you do and the larger picture of the organization. We can have a lot of influence from right where we are. Exactly.
And so you're kind of taking more of a leadership approach as the employee instead of a passive, just kind of taking in what upper management kind of says and reacting.
Right. A weirdly independent kid is still a fan of people who take charge. Take charge of their own growth and development, but also, it's taking charge of self-leadership too, is how are you managing, and that a lot of folks, this is tough. We have news that is depressing when you listen to it and traumatizing, and yet in order for us to continue to be well and function well, we have to focus on what we can control and lead ourselves forward in the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Amen to that. That's why I try not to watch news, or at least very small portions of it. Was there something kind of that inspired this book, like specific to your life and your background, that really just stood out?
I've started writing actually around 2013 and really got serious about it about 8 years later. But I had small kids and running a business, and so I'd write at night in the airplane or the hotel room when I was traveling, and really tried to compile the experiences that I was having when I was working with these amazing leaders out in public health and housing and other social services. And so I would have great, day of coaching or leading strategic planning, and then I'd come back at night and capture some of the insights from that so that they can be recycled. Now, one of the things I'll say about that is there's studies that show people who work on a problem and then work on the next problem and then work on the next problem don't do as well as people who work on a problem and then reflect on what helped it go well. They actually have about a 20% increase in effectiveness if you use reflection. And so one way that writing supported me was that it offered me the opportunity to reflect on what I was doing and capture it so that it can be reused. So all the stories in the book are real and also not real, so the names are changed, and some of them are a composite of a couple of different clients. But these are real examples of what my clients were going through and how they grew themselves and moved their organization out of the situation that it was in and literally transformed their lives at work.
It's interesting when you say, do a task, move on, do a task, move on. Kind of reminds me of the Einstein quote, you do the same thing, expect a little different results. You're just insane right there.
Well,
so
yeah.
You're not progressing, you're not learning, you're not moving forward.
And Einstein has a really great example of thought experiments. He used to do thought experiments with waves of light. You can't, he didn't have simulation, so he would use his mind and his imagination to see the problem. And that form of reflection, visualization, is known to be super effective. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the greatest minds used it. Because we also have opportunities to do action learning experiments, which is, instead of a thought experiment, we're actually testing something out, on the job. And the fun part to me, even when I worked in summers and I was 16 at the ice cream shop, we did action learning experiments. What can we do to make things better? You got big lines at the summer night, and we would put the certain ice cream in the case where the kids could see, because those were the kids' flavors. And, we would just be innovating right from where we were as ice cream scoopers. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take a lofty job to start to play around with what learning experiments you can do, whether they're thought experiments or experiments in physical form.
Now, is this something that you touch on in your book? Like, if for our listeners, if someone was to just say, well, what would be a nice overview, just little general overview of what your book talks about?
Sure. This is the guide to on-the-job development. And it's an on-ramp, so you don't need experience prior to this, but I've had CEOs read it and tell me they got a lot out of. It's for people who are making a difference and want to make a difference. And so when you combine that with on-the-job learning, there's 24 different mindset shifts that people can go through. And these are common ones about how do you deal with when you make a mistake and how do you deal with managing up. But what I do is provide an orientation to learning and development on the job. And there's a developmental cycle. We talk about getting to your developmental edge and finding the way that you can grow and learn on your job, on the job. It was important to me because what I found is that the kinds of opportunities that folks have to learn on the job, they don't see. Mm-hmm. We find what we look for. And if they're looking for these kinds of opportunities, they're much more likely to find them. So a lot of the book is increasing awareness of where we can learn, and then looking at our willingness. What are we actually motivated to learn? Because we want to connect up what the opportunities are with what matters to us. And then there's the actual building the skill, because as you start to become aware, you see an opportunity, you take action. Maybe the first time you do it, it doesn't go so well, or it goes partly well. And then you have a new level of awareness. So the book is organized around this cycle of development: awareness, willingness, skill. And sections of the book, the first section is on a call to change, and it really talks about why would we want to spend time growing and developing, especially in a job we don't like. So actually the reason is because it makes it much more interesting.
Right. Kind of forces you to like it, to
exactly.
really look at it. Yeah. And I like in the book that you even have exercises that people can do to really start thinking this way.
Exactly. And it's like, when I was writing the book, I was thinking about how folks are walking around their workplace as if it were like a gym, where you could, you see all these different workout machines, you can get your abs over here, your biceps over here, but they're walking around and not seeing it. They're not seeing that there are areas where they can be growing and doing exercises to grow the skills that matter to them. And, on the job, maybe it matters to you to do well in that job. Maybe it matters to you to do well in your life. And so you want project management skills, because that's actually going to help you in your private life, not just in your professional life. So knowing that the interchange, it certainly has been true for me. The things that I learn in my family group, I often bring with me to work, the maturity, the communication, and back and forth, the things I've learned at work, how to be a better listener, how to plan and work in different ways. I brought those home. We had family team meetings at our house because it really worked effectively to engage the kids.
Right. Gotcha. We're going to take a real quick break right here. Thank you for those just tuning in. We're speaking with Jessica Hartung, author of The Conscious Professional Entrepreneur, author, and leadership activist. We will be right back on K4CO. We are back with Jessica Hartung, author of The Conscious Professional. And thank you very much again for being here.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. I want to touch on something. Your book mentions changing your thinking and looking through a different lens changes your experience. And that kind of hits me pretty personally, because I've always believed, and there's even studies out there that show how you view something changes how you think of something.
Yes.
For example, if you just force yourself to smile, it actually starts to tell your brain that you're happier and you get in a better mood. So kind of wanted to touch this with your book and when it does come to the job, because of course there's a lot of people that just don't like their job.
Right.
They go in, clock out, go home, and then it's like, till tomorrow.
Transformation at work, has a lot of different elements, but it means upgrading your identity, who you think you are at work, how you're being at work. And so when we see ourselves differently, we can do things that are different. I call these micro identity shifts. And people go through micro identity shifts all the time. They just don't necessarily do them on purpose. And so the whole point of the book is to give you 24 of those shifts that you can go through on purpose. Now, whether your manager approves or likes what you're doing or not, you can grow those new skills. You can build a different perspective. And so when you're looking at things from a different lens, you're building awareness, you're building a different perspective, and that's something that no one can take from you. Now, I know sometimes it's hard if you have a certain mindset about work and you've been, operating that way for a long time. That's why taking time for reflection really makes a difference, is when you take a pause in the action and you're able to look at what you're doing with a different perspective. That's why, I really use reflection questions, like, in what way does this not fit my vision? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That means, first of all, you have vision. And second of all, if you can identify that there's a hitch in there, that's where you can start to get to work, because those problems are really opportunities.
And your book kind of forces people to go through these and recognize these.
I don't force, but I do encourage. One tool that folks can use is the power half hour. A power half hour is a half an hour of your day somewhere, and you can even split it up into a couple of chunks, but that's yours. You mentioned that I'm a pretty independent thinker. Seems like you are too. And so one of the things that we need to take charge of is what's going on in our head, what's going on between our ears, because success is a game that's played between the ears. Mm-hmm. The secret ingredient that makes work better is not going to come from outside of you. It's going to come from the inside, from the reflection, from the perspective, and then the self-leadership that starts to let us take action. I actually have a reader who wrote in about how some of those changes have affected her. Maybe I should share that.
No, that would be great.
Well, this is from Andrea, and she says, "Hi, Jessica. I just wanted to let you know that I've been thoughtfully reading The Conscious Professional," and she was diligently doing the reflection exercises, she says. "And I've found that your writing has a profound impact on me. The concepts are interesting and relatable on so many levels, and the examples clearly illustrate proactive ways one can learn, grow, adapt, and change, and improve over time. It takes concentrated effort, but it's both personal and professional benefit. I'm now blocking time in my work schedule to reflect and journal." So that's exactly what we were just talking about. "I'm reading more voraciously at lunch and outside of work, and I'm actively seeking opportunities where I can stretch out of my comfort zone and try new things." So some folks who don't like their work, they're too much in a comfort zone. Some folks are hanging out on the hairy developmental edge of they need some things that are more comfortable. So it depends individually. We'll talk more about that. She says, I like to think I'm fairly brave at stepping out of my comfort zone, but I realized I have potential and opportunity to do so much more. I volunteer for a community organization called Young Professionals, and I've served on a scholarship committee and done a fair amount of behind the scene work, which I've really enjoyed. And that's another area that folks can do. Sometimes when you really don't like your job and you can't see the opportunities right now, sometimes volunteer work is where folks find the opportunities to grow the skills that matter to them, and then they can apply them later on the job. So she says, however, you inspired me to step it up and finally sign up to participate in a professionals panel where professionals from the community speak to local high schools, seniors and juniors about planning for post-high school. Normally I pass on this opportunity, but last week I decided to go for it. I'm energetically looking forward to learning and growing as much as I can to contribute as well as I possibly can. So she just wanted to drop me a note to say thanks for the hard work and for the dedication and inspiring people. That, certainly made my day to receive that note and to know the difference that she's making. So I feel like the potential, whether we like our jobs or we don't like our jobs, whether our jobs use our skills well or not, we can be in charge of that and still find our way to make the kind of difference that we want to make and to enjoy the work that we do.
And it seems like then it's not just waiting for your upper management to say do this, do that. It's actually taking it upon yourself, more of a leadership role on it. So, and that would increase happiness on there. And going with happiness and the emotional side, in your book you actually talk about paychecks.
Yes.
Right? Of course you have your primary paycheck. Everybody knows what that is. You talk about a second paycheck, which is your emotional reward, your satisfaction in your job.
Yes.
But then you also have a third paycheck.
And I want everybody to be able to get their third paycheck. So
explain to us what that third paycheck is.
So we know the first paycheck is financial, the second paycheck, the emotional reward. Now some people will take a lower financial paycheck for a higher emotional reward, right? They'll balance those out. The third paycheck, though, is in a different category. This is the skills and development that you have that you take with you wherever you go. It's your personal portable capital that's built in. So those capabilities that you build in this job may or may not help you in this job, but they are something that you take with you because you want to. So for instance, in the book, I talk about one of an employee that was working for me when I worked in database management consulting, and he really wanted to be a professor someday, but very technically astute, not very good at social skills. So, in trying to get him to develop on the job, what we did is had him train folks on those technical skills to learn the skills he needed for his future career goals. Now, I was a kind of manager who loved that. I was very into developing my folks because this is clearly a bent I've had for a long time. Not everybody has a manager who takes an interest in them to find out what is it that you're really wanting for your future career and how do we build skills now in order for you to be better prepared for that path. So if you have a manager like that, blessings on you, lovely, and you're lucky. If you don't have a manager like that, I don't want you to not grow the skills. I want you to take charge of that for yourself, and that's what the book is about, is giving people those tools, reflection exercises, action learning experiments that they can do themselves without anybody knowing or even giving them permission.
And everybody's had, I'm sure, bad managers, good managers they got along with. And so you touch a little bit on management styles. Now, of course, this book is more tailored towards the employee. Now, can you touch on management styles a little bit? Is there one's better than the other in your mind, or is that insignificant when it comes to someone's emotional success?
Well, that's a really good question. I think managing up and learning how to manage our managers sometimes is part of our role, so that we get the kind of management we need. So sometimes that's, I remember even when I was leading an integrated work, I had an employee, I came in and she prepared something for me, and I came in ready to tell her what was wrong with it. And she said, could we take a moment and just appreciate the work that went into this first before we talk about how it can be improved? Whew, that was a perfect example of managing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I learned and transformed right there in my role as a leader because I was listening and paying attention and had deep respect for this person. And so she's helping me be a better manager. So the first thing about managers is learning. It's the ultimate competency, right? If we can learn how to learn, we can get to anything.
Right.
So what we want is to help foster an environment of learning. Now, not every manager will, but I'm saying you're independent from that. You get to have an environment of learning whether you work for somebody who is like that or not. So there is definitely a bias I have towards being in a learning relationship together with your manager, but sometimes employees don't show up. They are so passive that they don't ask to have their needs met, and so their managers don't know what their needs are.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes employees can be very aggressive where they get their needs met, and who cares about anybody else? I don't think that works very well either. But this nice assertive approach where, like the gal who confronted me, she got her needs met. She said, I want to talk about and appreciate what good work went into this before we talk about where it can be improved. I got my needs met as a manager because I got to talk about what needed to be improved, and I learned an important lesson. So I think staying awake at work, meaning aware, I mean, literally awake, but also figuratively awake,
right,
is one of the biggest barriers. And that's something that we have charge of any day, every day.
Right, instead of, and realizing that it's not just a one direction from your manager to you, it is also you to your manager as well. So I really like that. We're going to take another quick break here. We will be right back with Jessica Hartung, the author of The Conscious Professional. We'll be right with you. We are back on K4CO Radio with Jessica Hartung, author of The Conscious Professional. Wanted to kind of touch a little bit about, a lot of people are experiencing burnout these days in their work, and it's really hard, especially, I've felt that before, in my professional careers and jobs. And how do you address that?
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of burnout, but basically burnout's a psychological term, and it describes a chronic stress state where we're overwhelmed, we have not enough rest, we're perceiving that the pressures on us are beyond our ability to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that means that a person has, and there's some significant consequences of burnout, not only the exhaustion, but it reduces performance, and people get cynical, and they're less engaged in the rest of their life. They lose interest in the joyful activities outside of work as well. So it's real, and we can't make as big of a difference if we're personally running on empty.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not getting the sleep and we're not getting the fuel, our emotional fuel, our stamina, really drops, and we're not in it for the long game. So what we're looking for is something that engages us in work, and so that the burnout doesn't prevent us from living into our values. So what we do about it is, first of all, is the strategies to help. We want to look at how to scale back the volume, because if we're going to add in some time to reflect, if we're going to add in some time to learn, we've got so many things going on that it's hard to even take a moment to think.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first area to leverage is how do you have some time? We talked about that power half hour for thinking and journaling, but it may also involve setting some boundaries, or there's a philosophy about narrowing the number of tasks that you have. So let's say you've got this many 8 different things that you're working on right now, and if you can, for perhaps certain number of days, narrow that down to a lower number, you may need to do some graceful renegotiation, and that's a hard thing. It's a little bit about managing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes managing with peers. So it takes self-leadership as well to get out of burnout. But here's the other thing, is that a lot of folks who are burnt out are bored. They're
Right.
bored by the work. It's too much in this comfort zone, in the maintenance, sort of a zombie state of doing the same thing again and again. And so for that kind of burnout, one of the things that can really help is these action learning experiments, is where folks are seeing opportunities to grow the skills that matter to them and start to find that. Now, some jobs don't have as much opportunity as others, but I've found every job has opportunities for listening, communication, and I'll mention that strategically listening, learning how to listen with more awareness, and listening for different types of information can really advance your skills and advance your career. So we talked about the third paycheck being the skills and development that you grow over time. So the short answer is, when you're experiencing burnout, you're probably not getting a great third paycheck, and it's time to start. It's time to start looking for, where is the place where maybe I'm not feeling really satisfied by my work right now, but where can I grow skills here?
Mhm.
Where can I go grow skills here for my next role, or for something that really inspires me? So when I ask folks about their jobs and they're on a burnout track, there's usually some aspect of their job that they enjoy a little bit. And so we start there. You start with figuring out, how do you expand the parts that you like?
Right.
Because actually there was a study done on a clinician burnout. These are doctors and other clinicians, how hard they studied to get to that point, and here they are and they're burning out. They can't stay in the field because it's so full of pressures. And what they found is that if they took 20% of their time to work on the thing they cared most about, which was different for different people, right? Because we all have these different personalities. No one can tell you what you care about. This is something you do for yourself. But when they were able to spend 20% of their time on the aspect of their job they cared about, some it was teaching, some it was direct clinical practice, some it was research, reduced burnout by half.
Really?
By half.
Wow.
So there's such power in that 20% of time that you spend doing the things that you like. It gives you the bandwidth to handle more of the areas that are challenging for you. So burnout is a great impetus for getting on the job development track. It's a counterintuitive, because you feel like when you're burnt out, you want to isolate, you want to get away from, you want to stop.
Yeah.
And I'm asking folks to stretch out of their comfort zone a little bit and dive in a little deeper to what exactly could they be working on here. And it takes a little bit of energy, so we also have to take care of ourselves. And when we talk about self-care, a lot of folks think, well, that's selfish, for me to take extra time to set myself up for success, or to take extra time to care for my body. But being well at work, everybody else benefits, because you're not as crabby.
Right, exactly. No one likes being around that too.
Right. So I've had people sent to coaching for mood issues, that they're snapping and they're not pleasant to be around.
Mhm.
So, even starting to work on the self-care that allows you to be in a better mood, so that as you approach your work, you're not creating an environment. We're contagious. Our moods are contagious.
Oh yeah.
And so when we can show up with a healthy, well-fed, well-rested person, we're better able to tackle the burnout.
And it's amazing how just a small percentage, as you said, 20%, focusing on that actually improves your happiness by half.
Yes.
It's amazing how just focusing just a little bit of your time.
And I think that the balance between the first, second, and third paycheck is something that everybody can use as part of their portfolio, as they're managing themselves. Is this something that I need to do for the, compensation? Is this something that I'm doing for my own satisfaction? Or is this something that I'm doing to grow my capabilities for another time, another place, another different job, or maybe that there's opportunities where you are. So I know that folks generally are looking for promotion inside their current role, and I really feel that it's important that you not leave your job too soon. So grow all that you can at the job where you are.
Right.
You know, it's the low-hanging fruit.
That's very good advice. I actually really do like that. Now, if someone wants to be, say, more conscious professional, what can they just do right now? Instead of, just ordering your book, waiting for it to get there, you finally open it. What steps can they do right now?
Here's my number one, is to celebrate the small triumphs. So the first thing you can do as a conscious professional is to notice what's working. And not only with yourself, but also with those around you, and start to pay attention to that. When you draw out what's working, whether it's through a compliment or a kudos or a attaboy or attagirl, when you can start to do that for yourself, noticing those small triumphs and giving yourself a little internal, hey, good job, then you can start to also to do it for others. And that kind of snowballs, it has a lot of positive effect. Just like a bad mood has the same contagious effect, celebrating the small triumphs lifts everybody up. It also helps us become aware of what's working. So, because of our brains we're wired to look for threat. We're wired to look for what's wrong. It's how we as a species have stayed alive, right? Because
it's an instinct.
Exactly, very instinctually sensitive to danger.
Right.
So to become a conscious professional means that you're saying, yeah, I have that instinct, but I'm going to choose. I'm going to consciously choose to notice what is working, because that's going to be on a quieter, it's not going to hit you on the side of the head the way the problems do.
Right.
But when you start to look at what's working and how can that be expanded, then you can start to really find areas that you can appreciate, genuinely.
It's definitely hard to sometimes just take those little triumphs that you have. So I do understand that you do book clubs for implementing ideas in the book for businesses and nonprofits. Can you just tell us a little bit how that works?
Yeah, that's been one of my favorite things. So get 20, 25 people in an organization, getting them all reading the book, and then they have author conversations with me. And we do that, every couple of weeks.
So you do that interactively?
Interactively with them, what they're reading the book. And what's really great is that I've been an organizational consultant for many years. So you come in, you do an assessment, and you work with folks to help them make changes in their organization. But I find doing the book clubs is even more effective, because what's happening is they're reading the book and talking, and I facilitate discussions amongst the employees about what is it that they are learning, what is it that they would like to see improve and change, and how can they work together to do that. So when you set up a learning community like that, it lasts. It transcends the 6 meetings of the book club, but folks have now started to develop that pure connection where they can talk about the work from a perspective of growth and development. And a lot of folks, like I said, they didn't get a manager or a mentor who could help them do this. And so by coming in and working with employees at any level of the organization around how are they structuring their own learning, we have them develop like a personal plan for the areas they want to develop and grow in, and then figuring out how does that intersect with what the organization needs to have done. So some people will talk about growing in their own areas like work-life balance as one, and that involves learning about delegation and learning about some of the negotiation strategies for how do we get done what needs to be done, even if we can't do it all as perfect as we'd like it to be, right? So there's a lot of perfectionists out there.
And there's no such thing as perfection. We all should know that.
Right, but they want, to make it, and we really have to look at what's sufficient to the task here, so that some things are discretionary, they're optional, and yet people will put a lot of pressure on themselves. So when you get them working together in a group, they start to realize that there is ways that they can influence from where they are in the organization. And one of the things that we talk about in the book club is strategic line of sight. And that is a process by which you're looking at the work that you're doing and seeing how it fits, your team fits into your department or fits into your part of the organization, which fits into your industry and in fact fits into society. We have a lot of influence outward if we choose to use it. And so getting that expanded sense of influence is what the book clubs really do.
That is really, I really like that idea, especially in a work environment where they can work together and really kind of go through everything. The book is called The Conscious Professional by Jessica Hartung. Where can people find you mainly, but then also find The Conscious Professional online or in hardcover?
Well, consciousprofessional.com is where you can download the first chapter of the book. It's also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online. For listeners today, I actually have a special mini course on strategic listening because I know how important that can be for any job. And so at consciousprofessional.com/radio, they can sign up for the strategic listening course and get that with no charge. But I would love for you to be able to access consciousprofessional.com, see the first chapter, or buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I am going to be out and about in Boulder and Denver area to do some book signings, so we can talk about those too.
That's wonderful. Where is that?
So on March 27th, I'll be at the Fiction Beer Tap House in Colfax in Denver. On March 30th, I'll be up in Fort Collins at Happy Trails Coffee. And April 12th, I'll be back at Fiction Beer, but this time down in Parker. And April 20th at Barnes & Noble at Pearl Street in Boulder.
You're a busy lady.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us. And I love in this book, there's a lot of great quotes, which I really like. And especially myself, I really think a lot of it is how we think. I think we have a tendency to be reactionary as a person, when really we should be thinking differently and looking, as you said, through a different lens at what's going on.
And taking that time to reflect, it makes all the difference.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much again. Please feel free to come in. Again, have fun at your book signings. And everybody, that is The Conscious Professional. And say the website again. I do have it pulled up right here. It's just consciousprofessional.com.
Right, just consciousprofessional.com.
Just consciousprofessional.com. Excellent. Well, thank you very much again. I really appreciate you coming in and speaking with us. And everybody, the interview actually here will be available in a couple days on K4CO Radio, as well as our YouTube and website and everything. So definitely check it out.